You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. RX Radio, another week. You guys have been listening to me talk to myself a lot lately, Alin here included. So I'm sorry for that. But as a reward for making it through those episodes, I have Alin Kenworthy with me here today. One of my friends, we work at the same gym. We talk about exercise a lot. And I wanted to have him on the podcast because every single time we have a conversation, it's something I'm like, yeah, this is like a really good question. This is something that other people need to hear. And I just really respect the way that you think about things in general. And we'll get into, where that comes from in this episode a bit. But first off, thanks for being here, Alin. It's great to have you on the show. I know you've listened to this enough, so it's good to actually have you on here.
Absolutely, man. I remember when I finished Prescript Level 1, I said, Jordan, one day I want to be on this podcast. So I'm actually really excited to be here. This is a huge honor to finally be able to say the things that are in my head.
I love it. That's literally the only reason that we have this podcast is just to yell things that no one will listen to and hope that
Hey,
someone hears them out there.
that's the right idea.
Um, yeah, but I think you can do more justice in giving yourself an intro than I can. But I'll tell everyone, I've known Alan probably for what, 2 or 3 years now? 3 years
3 years
now?
training at sundown, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. We train at the same gym. Alan is a audio engineer. Is that your job positioning? Yeah.
AirPlay Audio SDK.
All right. He's that.
We'll
At,
dive into that one.
yeah, at a little company named Apple here in the Silicon Valley.
We'll
So
start up.
Alan's
We'll
Yeah,
start
we'll
up in the
start up in the
valley.
Silicon Valley here. Um, so he's had a successful career to this point. He's coming from a collegiate swimming background. So he does have kind of that sporting background that he approaches exercise from. And we've had a lot of conversations around like college S&C and how terrible it is very recently. And coming into like, you have a lot of curiosity around training, which is kind of the spark for a lot of the conversations that we have. But realizing, the level that S&C is at in the collegiate setting, largely, not everywhere. There's some places that do a great job, but it's a pretty low level, and it's very like things that have been passed down, very bro sciencey. It's this is the way things have always been done, so this is the way we're gonna always continue to do them, which isn't necessarily the best way to do things, which we now know by experimenting on ourselves and and the experiences that we've had. But I'm gonna shut the fuck up and I'm gonna kind of pass it to you, Alan. Will you give us a little bit of a rundown of kind of your background, where you're coming from, and how that's gotten you into this position where, yes, you're at Apple and you're having a successful career, but at the same time, your hobby, might we say, is coaching and training and learning about fitness.
Yeah, I like to call it a hustle.
Yeah.
But hobby is another good word. I feel like I'm too young for hobbies. I feel like hobbies like building model ships or something when you're 60. I call them a hustle still.
Yeah.
But
Bird watching.
bird watching. So side bit, we just got a bird feeder that has a camera in it, and I'm watching the birds. So I'm actually into bird watching now.
All right. So that's for sure a hobby.
There we go. Yeah, definitely a hobby. But yeah, thanks again for having me on. I think I think a really good explanation of myself comes from the fact that I remember in senior year of high school, my AP physics teacher was like going around the class. There's only like 7 people in this class. Um, and he's like, "What do you guys want to be? Like, where's this all going? Like, why are you taking AP physics?" And I was like, "Well, I want to be an audio engineer." He's like, "That's cool." And I remember like the other students in the class didn't really have answers. Like they're like, engineering, something this, something that. But that stuck with me because throughout the year, he's always like, and Alan wants to be an audio engineer. He's like, guys, he's got it down. He knows what he wants to be. And I was like, I had that intuition, I think, when I was as young as like fourth grade. I always like going near like the soundboard at the concert, or going near like the lighting board at the musical or whatever my parents took me to. And it like really interests me. And I had like internships at theaters when I was young, and I dabbled in like the AV stuff at school. And I kind of realized that like I had this one internship where the guy I was working with was like 65, had been divorced twice, like spent 19 hours a day at the theater. I was like, all right, this is not the career I want to go down. How can I like change my path to something more interesting and stay in audio, right? So I was like, let me get into audio technology. And fast forward, I end up as an audio and music engineer at the University of Rochester. Phenomenal program. And from there, they break it down for you into a couple of different domains in the audio industry. And I chose the programming domain, and I dove headfirst into that after, sophomore year, after initial survey of the field. And from there, heads down all the way to my first job, all the way to my current job at Apple. So even from a young age, I kind of like get these things in my head that I want to do, and I take my chances on surveying a large amount of opportunities and trying to narrow down what it really is that I want. And I think that's really a very long version of what I actually did in a very short time when it came to fitness. Um, so, grew up as a swimmer. My dad didn't actually start me in swimming competitively until I was about 12 years old, which, as you and I have talked about many times before, is way later than most kids, right? You got kids on six travel ball teams at 7 years old, and they can't feel their shoulder because they've thrown it out pitching, 50 pitches every like 3 days or whatever. So, um, I took something from that too, where my father had this intuition that I didn't need to go to the top of the competition stage, the top level of swimming, trying to break world records at 11 years old. And I did have a kid on my team. He was a national record holder at 11 years old, and I'll tell you when he quit. It was about 3 years later. Um, so this idea that I never had to jump in head first, never had to go for the top spot at the beginning, kind of work my way up, survey the field, figure out where I want to go with swimming. Um, kind of led me to this really successful swimming career by where, the end of college, I was able to still go at best time. My shoulders were relatively intact, relatively. Um, and one funny story was I took my junior year off of college for swimming because I really want to dive into this whole programming thing at Apple. And this is one of those things where, like you said, I have a lot of things going on and I'm able to kind of sort out what needs to take top priority at the moment. And at that moment, it was programming. And I came back the following year after not having swam at all, but I was able to refocus and still go at best time. So it kind of just speaks to the idea that be able to organize your priorities. And while you can still have a lot of priorities, be able to choose the best one at the moment and how to manipulate the amount of time you actually have to, you know, produce best outcome is definitely something that is takes skill and takes a lot of practice over time. I've had a lot of great opportunities to do that to the point now where I'm a fitness coach at a Sundown Coaching Group Fitness Group CrossFit classes. I have my full-time job at Apple. Right now, I'm working with my kids in my kids' baseball league. And also, I happen to have a family at home too. And we're able to balance all those things and still see positive outcomes in all of them. But I think that's kind of where I am right now. It's kind of where I came from. Um, we get more into fitness stuff, but that's the background there.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Uh, Definitely have a lot of balls in the air at all times. And I see you sometimes just running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And it's like, it comes in waves as it seems to me, but I'm sure it's constant as it seems to you. But
Yeah.
something that you kind of touched on there that is really interesting to me was your junior year in college, kind of taking that year off of swimming to develop an app. And that's something that I wrestled in college. I wrestled my whole life growing up. Maybe like my college or my wrestling careers is kind of the analog for me to what swimming was for you. And for me, that was consuming. Like sports were life. That they were my entire identity up until like I got out of college. So I guess my question for you around that is what was the mindset or the decision making process like to be like, I'm going to step away from this thing that is a big part of my life right now because I want to pursue this other thing. And then also in making that switch to come back to swimming after taking that time off to develop an app.
Yeah. College is everything all the time. You got, five assignments that are always late. You got five more coming down the line. And one thing that you see as college athletes, I think, um, even as a school where every sport was D3 except for the squash team, um,
What division were they?
there's only D1 for squash, and they happen
Oh,
to be the best too.
damn,
Like I think they just
Rochester's
won.
killing it in
I think they
squash.
just and they call it a six-peat this year. I think Rochester squash just won a six-peat national title.
What the
Um,
fuck? They're the Michael
yeah,
Jordan of fucking
no,
squash.
they pull for real. They built a beautiful squash facility. Also, beautiful swimming pool. I give them credit. Some colleges forget about a certain like sport and they just get the old one, but
Yeah.
beautiful swimming pool too. But student athletes are some of the busiest people on campus. But from how I saw it in college, they were some of the most organized people because they were either at practice, they're in the weight room, they're in study hall, they're eating as much as they can as fast as they can,
Yeah.
or they should have been doing one of those other four things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there is no time in college that they really have for free time. They're like always supposed to be doing something. So
Mhm.
I think like that mentality that you're always supposed to be doing something in junior year, I realized that the thing I was supposed to be doing at that time was actually not swimming at all and trying to really um, do a project that would advance my skill on this pillar of my life, which is, you have to realize in college that your athletic career is not the biggest pillar in your life. It's not the thing that's going to support you. Well, it may support you getting into college. You swim to get into school, or in case of D3, it becomes an equal pillar with your academics in some cases, or maybe slightly less depending on how schools recruit. But I realized at that point the biggest thing in my life was not swimming, and it was actually trying to nail in some concrete evidence that I was a good programmer, and developing an app. I did it throughout the one year of school, finished it in the summer, and then by the time I was done, I said, "This is a really good project." I did this out, not only in school, I submitted for a couple classes, and I also then continued it on my own. Um, Never made the app store because I was too poor to afford the app developer license, but it still sits there in my computer. And I came back to swimming because uh, I don't know, I just like swimming. I was like, the senior year is going to be a busy one. All my projects are driven through classes. Um, I think I'm able to then come back and balance for one more year of swimming. I know this is going to be my last opportunity. I want to go out with a bang. Um, and honestly, I haven't swam since college. So I was, that was the end. That was the end of a very long journey on a swimming career. And I thought it was just one opportunity to come back and get it one more time. I
Yeah.
had the time management skills built from the first 2 years. I felt very accomplished in this other pillar. I was ready to get back in the pool. And I know you can relate, any athlete out there can relate. It's like if you try to step away from your sport for too long before you've put that cap on the career, it burns until you can, get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my mind, that takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that at that point where like you are not done with your swimming career, but you're stepping away at a very like critical time in your career. Like, freshman, sophomore year, you're kind of getting used to that level of competition. Junior, senior years, like that's when you show up and that's when you go. But that's really cool to see that like you were able to go through that journey. And the thing that you said that I liked is like you wanted evidence. You wanted to prove to yourself that you were good at this thing and you wanted to pursue this thing. And the fact that you were able to do that kind of in that pursuit, that's really cool because that was just the beginning of that journey is what it sounds like. It's like, all right, I'm going to justify this to myself and then I'm going to go do the things that I want to do, that I enjoy doing until I'm done with that. And then you kind of, it sounds like that kind of led you into your career. And I'm sure that was a pivotal point in getting your first job, like you said, and then ultimately getting your job at Apple, which I imagine has to be insanely competitive.
Yeah. If I ever have a bit of advice, another thing I do, this is really cool. I still outreach to my university. Um, there's a class that all the engineers take called like communicating your professional identity. It's because all those engineers have very little social skills. So anyway, they write their resume, they write their cover letter, and they send them to existing people in the field. And I'm signed up to read those resumes and give feedback on them. Um, but Where was I going with this? Rats. Uh, oh man, I lost my track. But anyway, when I was writing my resume, I submitted to Apple right off the bat. You know, I always wanted to work at Apple. I got my first iPod when I was 14. Thought it was
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever. Never looked back. Saved up for an iPhone. Always loved Apple. It's and always my side goal. Be an audio engineer and hopefully one day do it at Apple. Anyway, I put my resume in. Um, Put it in a couple times. Got to level one on the interviews. Got to level two on the interviews. And what the story here is, when they say we're going to keep your resume on file for a later date, they're not bullshitting you because I got my job off a call saying we found your resume in our database and we would like you to come actually interview for this new position. I was like, no way. Like, where did you
You weren't
find me?
actively applying. They just
No,
found your resume. That's
they
unreal.
found my resume in the database from the existing or previous applications. And whenever they say that, I'm like, all right, fine. Like, fine, see you later. I'll
Yeah.
see you never. But um, I guess they actually look at them. And yeah, I got through the whole process and I got my job at Apple, and that's how I actually ended up here in California. Um, but yeah, put your best foot forward even when applying. And maybe I had to resubmit my resume. I was like, is it current? Does that have my most recent work on it? So I had to resubmit a new one. But the fact that it was there was, I was very surprised. And I tell all the kids that whose resumes I read now, I said, put your best foot forward on every one because you never know when a company will go back and look.
Yeah.
So there you
Dude,
go.
that's unreal. That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Uh,
glad that Apple brought you into my life. Uh,
yeah. It's the only reason I'm here. I would still be in Florida, but um, we'll talk about Florida for a second because after 4 punishing years in Rochester cold, I was blessed with the warm heat of Fort Lauderdale, Florida for 3 years. And that's actually where I started CrossFit. And the burning question on your mind is, Alan, why the hell are you doing CrossFit? Um,
I ask myself that every day. I'm
I
like,
know
we have
every
such
time.
intelligent conversations around exercise. Why the hell are you doing CrossFit, Alan?
I feel you. And I ask myself too, and I I actually am able to justify it. It takes me a couple steps, but I do justify every time. I started CrossFit actually off of that app called like One Class or Class Pass.
Class
You get
pass,
like
yeah.
credits and you can go take like hot yoga and kickboxing. Um, I did my lifting sheets from swimming after college, of course, in like your college swimming outfit because that's the only thing you have left, right? Like your training gear from school. And I got really bored of it, hit plateaus. I really knew I wasn't doing the right thing. I'm like, I don't really know how to do a power clean and I don't really know what it's for, but the lifting sheet says to do it, so I'm gonna do some terrible power cleans.
That's awesome
Um,
to see.
and I got really in my head to the point where like I had a section on my lifting sheet where I had to like write a note to myself every day because I was just getting so in my head. And I was really playing on this emotional side of lifting. I was like, I'm not seeing results. So I opened ClassPass, tried a couple things, um, and I tried CrossFit. And the owner of the gym was maybe like 70 or 80 members, probably the size of like the lifting room at Sundown, which is very small. And
Yeah,
like
like a
a
thousand
size like
square
a
feet.
yeah, like the size of a two-car garage, basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, and she got me hooked right away. She's like, "When are you join?" I was like, "I'm on class." She says, "All right, so buy a membership here and quit." And this coach, named Casey Anderson, probably one of the most pivotal people in my life, uh, changed my whole outlook on fitness. One of the things she made me realize that I was really uncoachable and I was really not receptive to coaching or instruction, or what I see from a lot of my athletes now. And it's one of the things I want to undo because you want to be the coach that you wish you had as an athlete. And she had this one motto that really struck with me. Whenever you try to lift, and you say this too, she's like, just do it. It's like, you want to lift 200 pounds. Okay, well, you got to put 200 pounds in the bar and then you have to lift it. And that really stuck with me because at the beginning, I didn't really understand it. Like, you're still trying to learn like all the different like movements, and you don't really know what power position is, and you don't know what anything else is, but all you know that is your coach is like, if you want to lift 200 pounds, you have to lift 200 pounds. And if you don't do it, then you won't do it. Um,
That's exactly true. Empirically.
and and that got me through a lot of like plateaus and stuff because it just gave you this mentality that it's at the end of the day, it's emotion is great and everything, but if you want to get better, you actually have to develop the muscle to get better. It's not just a mental game. You can't just put your head down and charge as hard as you can, which at the end of your swimming career is pretty much all you have left. You can't feel your shoulders, your hips are all messed up, and you just dive into the pool and you go as fast as you can. Your technique's not really going to change anymore. Your mentality has been developed for 13 years. You're pretty stuck in your ways. It's almost like you're a senior citizen of swimming at that point as a D3 athlete. So this kind of rebirth in fitness I had at the beginning of CrossFit really stuck with me because I was able to take a new sport, and we'll talk about it, CrossFit as a sport, and it's not exercise. But yeah, this new sport, and it gave me this new mentality, this new outlook on fitness where you don't have to just put your head down to do something. You can back up to a different level and then reapproach, and you'll still be able to, you know, take a goal and achieve it without getting caught up in all the side effects of athletics and of a doing a sport.
Yeah. I think it's a really good idea in the way that I look at that. And that's like, I absolutely agree with that. It's like, sometimes you just got to fucking do it. And in my mind, the way that that pairs with intelligent programming. So now we're clearly stepping away from CrossFit, but it should be done in like a cyclical way, right? Is that like you're saying in college, like you've developed this certain technique that at the end of your college career, like if you're at the end of the season, it's like, no, 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 we're not refining things. Like you're just going to fucking go as hard as you can. And it's something that like maybe it's been refined to a point to your senior year, but like every season it's kind of that as you're developing a technique and then you're just running as much current through the system as you can. And then the next season you kind of pull back and you develop that technique again. And then you hopefully can run more current through the system that time. And time over time, you do the same exact thing. And it's funny
Right.
because like, I'm sure you've seen this in our gym and I've seen it in, just generally around the world when people exercise is that there's kind of two types of athletes in a sense. There's three. There's people that do things, the best possible way. And then there's people that are kind of like you're saying, is like the just do it type of person. Is that I want to lift 200 pounds, so I'm going to try and lift 200 pounds and I'm going to fail it 10 times today. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to fail it 10 more times until I succeed one time. Or there's the other type of person that hyper fixates on technique and doing things, 100% perfect. And like they're very timid when it comes to actually doing the exercise for the intended stimulus or the intention behind it. And then when it's time to say like a power clean, when it's time to actually power clean, the goal of a power clean is yes, to move with a high level technical proficiency, but it's also to move a lot of fucking weight really quickly. So if you're
Hmm.
moving a little bit of weight really quickly, you're not really doing the thing. You're not getting the benefit of that. Or you've kind of missed the boat in terms of intention. So it's like there is a skill associated to lifting heavy, and you need to train the skill of lifting heavy as far as your technique will allow. But then you need to break it down to the studs again, and you need to rebuild that technique to a better level or a higher level, and then you can just kind of push through that again. And that's kind of my interpretation of what you're saying is like, yeah, sometimes you just got to do it. But then also sometimes you need to relearn how to do it.
Absolutely. And I think in the technical sense, at the advent of my CrossFit career and my more modern training career, it was all down to the studs, and I was this coach had kind of shaped me into an athlete that was ready to relearn on the technical side. And what she let me keep from my previous career was the go get it attitude. So
Yeah.
when she turned on the switch and said, "All right, it's time to lift," she had the confidence that she was training me as a newly ready to learn athlete that would absorb that new skill and then bring in the old athlete that was ready to go get it and had that competitive nature and was going to fire on all cylinders when it was trying to load up the barbell or, um, test a new skill in a high volume workout or something like that. Um, and that as a coach, seeing that is something I think really is the basis for my coaching career today is how can I manipulate any athlete and bring out the go-getting nature wherever it may be in their life? A
Yeah.
lot of people I work with are programmers, and I know they are go-getters when it comes to like programming a computer. There's companies there's tech companies that give you bonuses based on the amount of code you write, like line by line. You get a bonus for 10,000 lines. And that in my head, I don't do that. But that in my head is
Honestly,
like,
I don't even know what the fuck that means. I'm like, I could probably have ChatGPT do that for me.
yeah, yeah. But basically, um, it's a very objective measurement of your work. It's less
Right.
qualitative, very quantitative.
Yeah.
And if I can reach into athlete's psyche and pull out that quantitative nature to high quantity, high quality through teaching good skill, I can balance what I can give them and what they already have. And I think one of the problems I see with coaches, um, especially in large group fitness classes, is it's too broad of a pull to try to pull someone's ability to go get it, to pull that quantitative ability from an athlete. How do we get the athlete to want to do heavier weight, right? We can sit there teaching something the whole class, but at the end of the day, if they don't feel comfortable with it, where's the go-getter attitude that you're hoping they have once you teach them the right thing?
Hmm.
I do this really interesting thing when I teach our fundamentals class. I put up a workout on the board and I write 5 minutes AMRAP, like 10 air squats, 8 box step ups, 6 burpees, right? And I say, all right, look at this workout, new athletes. Like this looks pretty easy. 5 minutes, you do the reps, 10, 8, 6, super easy. Air squat, box step up, burpee. We just learned these movements, how easy it is, right? And then I go write a 1 in front of the 5. 15 minutes AMRAP. And a little different story, right? And then I put a 0 next to the 10. 15 minutes AMRAP, 100 air squats, right? And then 80 box step ups, 50 burpee. They're a whole different workout, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then usually I run one of those with them, and then we have a little debrief afterwards. And here's the trick I get them with. I say, hey, look, we never changed any of the movements, right? I said the air squat never changed, right? The box step up never changed. The burpee never changed. So here's the lesson to you guys. I can teach you the skill of that air squat over and over and over, and we can get really, really good at it. But if you never get good at it, we can never play the game of the 100 reps, the 10 reps, the 15 minutes, the as fast as you can, the as many as you can, the as long as you can. Because your form at the end of the day, your technique at the day, your ability to perform that skill is going to be garbage. And you'll always be blocked by your ability to not be able to do that skill. And you're going to get caught up in that. And you're going to wonder why you can't do 100 reps. And that's why we see people quit after a month. Why they quit after 2 months. They quit after they try to put that initial heavier load on the bar because that spark goes off in them and they're ready for the go-getter attitude, but they never built the skill. And as a coach, where I come in is I don't worry about the reps. When I read a workout, I just read it. We don't dwell on the workout. We dwell on the skills in the workout. What skill are we going to get better at today? And then how are we going to apply that to our workout? Whether it's a large volume workout where I only have 5 minutes to hone in on a specific thing and warm up, or whether it's a short workout with a lifting session where I can give, you know, a Jordan style soliloquy on the intricacies of pull to a high pull in your power clean, right? How do we generate most power through our hips? How much time do I have? What is the workout? But if we can't hone in on at least something with skill every class, your athletes are going to get so caught up in the sport of CrossFit. And the sport of CrossFit is just that. It is a sport. Okay. Cycling a barbell is different than your clean. It is two different things. And athletes get caught up in that. How do I learn how to clean? I want to get really good at cleaning. And then they go to the workout and then their cycling looks like crap. And it's like, well, I never taught you that skill. Like, oh, it's a skill. Yes, it's a skill. Right. So again, whatever's on the board, we can't worry about the numbers. You have to bring that go-getter attitude once your coach has brought you the ability to do that skill.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great approach, and it's a qualitative approach to such a quantitative sport, right? And I think the competitive aspect of what CrossFit is and the competitive fitness component of it, and like even the compete daily, like find someone on your level and like you're racing them in this. It drives objectivity, right? It's I got more reps, I lifted more weight, but it doesn't necessarily take into account the quality of it, the qualitative portion of
Yeah.
it. And that's it. Kind of what I've seen is that it breeds the mindset of more is better, right? And
Hmm.
in all aspects. And that's like, all right, I want to get better at cleaning. I need to do more cleans, not better cleans. I need to do more cleans, or I need to do heavier cleans so that I can go faster on my lighter cleans. And it kind of sidesteps this whole thing that you're talking about is actually the skill of the exercise you're trying to perform, right? Proficiency is the thing that allows you to scale this, not necessarily
Hmm.
load or capacity. And I really like that rationale that you have when you're teaching new people is that okay, like if we do a very little amount of this, you can probably get through it anyway, anyhow. But if we scale that up and we do a very high volume in these exercises, you're not going to make it unless you're proficient at the movement. And being proficient is actually the buy-in to building capacity. It's not the other way around. It's not capacity is not going to make you proficient. It's being proficient in the skill is going to now give you the ability to train your capacity to do the movement. So I think that's a really valuable outlook to have on this type of exercise particularly, but exercise in general, because that's not specific to CrossFit. That's any old gym bro in the gym. That's any beginner power lifter. It's people that have an understanding of what exercise is, and that the more weight you use, the stronger you get doing it, or kind of vice versa. They see strong people moving a lot of weight, so they think the way to get strong is to move more weight, when in reality, it's to get better at doing the thing that allows you to move the weight, and then that will enable you to do the thing with more weight over time, which is another important part of it is time. If you don't stay in the sport that you're doing or continue to do that exercise for a long time horizon, you're not going to get better at it. And you're not going to be able to do it for a long time horizon if you injure yourself, or if you reach these plateaus, or if the technique of the skill that you're practicing doesn't align with progression, right? If you are using a technique that isn't necessarily progressible, then all right, you'll reach the end of the road, and then yeah, something will give. Either it's the fucks that you have to keep trying to get better at this, or it'll be your MCL or your fucking shoulder labrum or something else, because you're doing it in a way that's not consistent with the way that people see progress in that movement. So I think that's a really valuable approach to have, and I think you're sending the right message to the right people at the right time.
Absolutely. One thing I want to add to that is what you just said is fantastic. And I wish I could say that to my athletes every day, but we just
Right.
burned whatever amount of minutes of a 1 hour class. So one of
Right.
the things I've gotten really good at, and this is prescript through and through, you got to load your arsenal, right? You got to be able to hit them with any size output for whatever amount of short time you have to explain something. But I've boiled that down into this idea that CrossFit is about efficiency, and efficiency is repeatable proficiency, and proficiency comes from your ability
Beautiful.
to do the movement. And if you can't do the movement, you're not going to be able to repeatably do that movement, right? Really high skill, be able to do the skill over and over and over. And then on this other side, you add speed into the equation and efficiency, where people get caught up because a lot of times it's like, all right, we got, you know, 20 power cleans, and then you go to the wall and do the wall walks. Make sure you're super efficient on those power cleans. And people are like, I don't know what that means. Is that like fast? Is that like smooth? Like what does that mean? It's efficiency doesn't necessarily mean fast, and that's where people get caught up in the competitive nature of a sport, like anything, right? Efficient swimming isn't just fast swimming. You see, um, some of the most beautiful stroke. It doesn't look fast. It doesn't look like they're running around with it or swimming around with like a chicken with their head cut off. I don't chicken swim, but um, it doesn't look like that. They're beautiful, long, intentional strokes, right? An efficient person at cycling a barbell does not look like a chicken with their head cut off. It's clean, solid, crisp movement. That's what efficiency is, and speed is just a byproduct of being really efficient.
Yeah.
Because once you have that technique memorized, Um, and once you're able to apply that pillar of repeatable proficiency, you can then understand efficiency as just a product of your repeatable proficiency times speed. And then you can get as efficient as you want. And I remember this one swimming facility I trained at. We were a guest at their facility, but the team that whose home that was, their t-shirts for that year had their name on the front, and on the back it said, "Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect."
Love it.
And
Yeah.
my dad really liked that, and he used to always tell me, "Hey, gotta get you one of those shirts. Gotta join that team." Fine, but um, that's a really like mean way of saying it, because like telling a kid that is like, super shitty. It's like, oh, I have to practice perfectly. But when you start to understand like the what that really means, it's like you said, you can't just go in and lift. The coach says we got to clean more to get you better. It's like, sure, you should clean more, but you should do it correctly, damn it. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's not doing the whole thing correctly, it's like, all right, let's just start using your hips. Focus on doing one thing better, right? Do that thing perfectly. And then we build habits, get in a habit of doing it correctly. And if you approach something from, what I actually drive a lot of my nutrition on is habit stacking. And if you apply that to, I mean, that's just a general term in all of training, but if you habit stack something as complex as a clean, it's not going to be fast, but doing those small things perfectly over and over and over, and then adding and adding and adding, you start to see really good lifts, and they actually don't happen out of thin air. And that's what people get caught up on. They think they're going to get everything right. The perfect clean is going to come out of thin air. It absolutely does not. It
Right.
comes from learning how to use your hips, right? And then building from there on learning how to use your hips and then pull the bar vertically upwards. And then from there, it learns how to move your arms around the bar while, making sure we're not deviating front to back. And, as a coach, you want to make sure, and I try to make sure that, and one of the hardest things I do is trying to index athletes and figure out where they're at and what is that next habit I need to help them build. And unfortunately, for a lot of CrossFitters, it is at the hip. And I think someone made a podcast about how important the hip is and how important we need to learn how to, brace our core. Why do we do
Someone
planks?
listening.
So, and why do we need to do planks and warm up when we're doing, not something that's, core training that day? Well, it all starts with the core. So let's start with the core warm up. Let's warm up our core. Let's warm up our hip with, you know, trying to feel those hips moving forward and backwards. Um, and try to find our body in space, and then from there, when we come to our lifting session, what is the habit we're going to work on,
Mhm.
right? But it comes from this idea that there are rudiments to everything we do in CrossFit. And CrossFit as a sport, if you take something really obvious like baseball, what is baseball? It's throwing a ball, there's a little bit of running, and there's swinging a bat. And I'm really sorry to anyone who plays baseball. I'm gonna hear some DMs about that. But if you
Get
take
at him, Kyle
CrossFit,
Rogers.
yeah, how dare you simplify my sport?
Yeah.
But okay, sure, swimming. What is it? Moving your arms and legs and other things. But we could do this for every sport. But what is CrossFit? It's really using, it's a lot of hip thrusting. It's a lot of, shoulder flexion because we do a lot of things overhead. And everything stems off of that. So if we can break down CrossFit into these rudimental movements, and even if I have 5 minutes of warm up and I can warm you up on those rudiments, we can go find that habit we're going to work on today.
Mhm.
Because the worst thing that I see is a situation where athletes aren't warmed up to do those rudiments and they have to find it in their movement for that day. And that at that point, the session's completely ruined because now I have a bar in your hands. You're still not moving your hips correctly. And the whole session's shot because today's the push jerk. And when you think push jerk, you're thinking about your shoulders, but damn, your hips aren't moving for shit.
Yeah.
And it's just never going to work because you don't have nothing stacked. Um, and then the athlete puts on a belt and then it's all over and it's like, holy Christmas, why do we have belts on?
Yeah. It's insane to me how, like, yeah, push jerks a shoulder movement, but everyone's back hurts when they do it. It's insane. I don't get it because we're using our shoulders. But
Right.
I mean, you touched on a really important point here, and I think I don't know if you were, I think it was a lab that we talked about this very recently, but when it comes to motor learning, there's this rationale. It's called the whole part whole method, which means that like when you're learning a new skill or a new motor pattern, it's been shown that it's most effective to see the entire movement, maybe even try the entire movement as a whole, and then break it into isolated parts and learn each of those isolated parts and then put those back together in series to build the whole movement again. And that's a much more digestible way to learn something than, we'll stick with the clean. Like a clean. Okay, someone that doesn't understand how to use their spine to transfer force from their hips and their feet pushing into the floor to the barbell that's in their hands, they're going to have a really bad time if you just show them what a clean is and then you say, all right, go do that. Like, no, no, more knees, hip extension, just more hip extension, just use more hip extension, more hip extension, use more hip extension. Like, your everyday CrossFit coach, more hip extension. But if you put them in a very isolated position of, okay, this is where the bar needs, or I'm sorry, this is where your body needs to be as the bar's at your hips. And this is how you create hip extension against a rigid torso. Let's just practice that, because you're never going to be able to do any of this correctly if you don't get that. But that's like the 17th, at best, if not the 37th thing that you're going to do in the clean. Like, you're probably going to fuck it up in your setup. You've already fucked up your grip. You don't know what full foot pressure is. You're not bracing your core. You don't even know what the fuck a lat is. Like, you've messed up so many things before you even put yourself in position to be able to understand how to extend your hip. So let's just start with, the thing that you're going to absolutely get wrong. And then let's make sure you understand that. And then we'll build up the things that happen before that and after that. And we'll kind of start from the middle of movement and we'll build our way out. And that's like
Right.
very specific to a clean, which it might look different in other movements. You might not start at the middle and build both ways. You might start at the beginning and then build towards the end. But still, the idea is that it's going to be a lot more digestible if you take specific portions of the movement or the technique. And I'm sure this holds true with swimming, with baseball, with swinging a bat, with throwing a ball. Like, there's specific portions that you need to drill to understand the positions that you need to be in at a specific snapshot in time in that movement pattern. And that's going to be really helpful to the skill acquisition here, is understanding that, okay, if we can build each of these positions in isolation, in like not in real time, not with any level of fluidity, and we can segment that, because one of the things that you mentioned earlier is like, people think going faster is efficiency. When going faster is not essentially efficiency. Moving faster will be a result of being efficient in something, but efficiency is really doing something, I'd say with the least effort, right? And that's what we're trying to do as we start to build these movements. Like, say you and I both have the same potential to throw a baseball, right? And say one of us understands the technique and the positions and the kind of the physics of throwing a baseball a bit better, even though we have the same potential. Now, if you have flawless technique and I just try really hard, you're probably going to reach a higher amount of that potential because you understand what efficiency is and how to capitalize on that, because it's a lot lower effort. And maybe even, our first couple pitches, we throw the ball the same speed. But if it takes lower effort for you to be able to throw that ball at that speed, then each one of your pitches, start to finish, is going to look the same, versus my first 5 might be fucking moving, and then they get slower, and to the point where technique was never good. So it was just this fast downslide of breakdown that now I'm throwing it into the stands by my 15th pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that point about um, habit stacking that I mentioned before has a huge implication on the analogy you just made, because um, habits are formed very quickly and they are broken very, 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 very slowly. Um, and one of the things I see with a lot of the kids in baseball now is and in the gym, we'll keep it on the gym as well, but you can teach them something, and if they learn it wrong, especially in those early days, it's shooting them out of a cannon in the wrong direction and they, it's hard to rein back in. But um, when you stack habits and you teach this, rudiments principle based approach where you are just focusing on the hip drive, the hip extension, um, you can hope that they get to that hip extension in a reasonable way. You know,
Mhm.
once I see them rolling a bar towards their feet, I know their setup's going to be garbage. But what I look for in that habit stacking model and taking these snapshots is the wins you can give an athlete are was your picture looks really good today. Your snapshot looks really good. What was the image we're looking for? And the image for you today was that we were looking for that bar right up against your body, huge extension. I see the veins in your calves popping out. I see you on all 10 of your toes, and the snapshot looks great. Let's put it in Sports Illustrated. Like, if no one saw the rest of your lift and they had that one image, you are an Olympic athlete, right? And
Yeah.
that's where I pride myself on giving athletes wins, because when they do go to the workout and they go do the sport and they get tired after the first round and they break down and their back hurts, it's like, well, at least it looked really good at one point today. Okay, so let's go back to that feeling next week. Okay, we'll chase that feeling. Maybe we need to stick with it another week. Maybe it looks really good. And one thing coaches don't tell their athletes, and this is like, you're doing good job. Like, it's like, oh, good job today, good job today. But what I do a good fucking job at? Like,
Mhm.
listening, like,
Yeah.
putting
Straight
enough
up.
chalk on my bar. What do I do a good job at? So if you tell your, and I'm getting upset, but if you tell your
Yeah, get
athletes,
pissed
like,
off. Fuck them all.
but if you tell your athletes what they did a good job at, whether they know it or not, or you use a word that they heard in class, like, hey, great job on hip extension today, or be like, all right, I guess that's cool. Like, I'm a good hip extender. But
Yeah.
they take that, because when you think of the habit stacking model and you think of this granular principles based approach, and you go talk about um, you know, horizontal hip movement in your warm up next time, and they remember being good at it, and they can chase that feeling, and all the, the web in their head just forms of all the, memories they have of doing it correctly, and they can put together this model. The bubble gets bigger, and the bubble
Yeah.
gets bigger the more association you can have with that good thing. So one of the things I like to do is I like to tell the athlete what they did really well, even if it's a specific thing. It's like, great cleans today. Well, what part of the clean was good?
Yeah.
Because it felt like shit. But if you tell them that, like, hey, your hip extension looked really good today, or hey, you had really fast elbows today, nice job on the fast elbows, they start to create that bubble around that part of the granular synthesis we're trying to produce of a full clean, or the habit stacking model that some coaches use where you're trying to build up a proper clean. They can start pulling those things. But there's a deficit in just telling people, go fist bump 10 people in the gym today and make sure you tell them a good job. It's like, that's great. Their kids probably come up and say high five, thanks for making dinner for me too, right?
Yeah.
Don't tell someone thank you because, or they did a good job, because you just have to tell them what they did a good job at and help them create something from it. um, Reward is also a very big opportunity to help solidify something in their mind, right? You give a child a piece of candy when they did not just, empty the dishwasher, but they emptied the dishwasher and put all the dishes away in the correct spot, speaking from experience. Um, but, you know, they get that, they get their piece of candy from knowing not just they did a good job in the gym today, but they built a good hip extension. And then when I go warm them up on, B stance RDLs this week, they can pull that in and they build that habit, and I can get them there faster to then either, reinforce good habits or build the next level up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Maybe we get, sorry, I think, maybe we keep going next week. It's great. It's a great model.
No, I love it. And I think that's a really good point because like feedback needs to be as specific as possible, right? And it needs to be positive and negative. Like it could be, yes, you did a really good job with hip extension, but you're using too much arms pulling under the bar or like whatever the fuck the next thing is. So it's like, all right, I did this well, I did this not so well. How can I bridge the gap on this? I want to maintain this, but this needs to change. And it starts to get them to more accurately assign their problem solving skills to the actual issue. Like, all right, what's the issue here? How can I solve that? As opposed to just thinking like, oh, okay, like My clean was good. All right. Or, I use too much tension in my arms off the ground. Like, how the fuck do you fix that? They don't know how to fuck. That's your
Right.
job to tell them how to fix that. And if you
Right.
don't know, then you're not going to be able to tell them. But like, that's the thing is the more specific you can be, and the more you can hone in on, all right, this is happening well, this is happening poorly. Then they have an accurate inventory of what they actually need to work on.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it's really important that, like I said a while ago, you always give them a win. You always have to give your athletes a win because at the end of the day, we're, a customer facing industry and we need happy customers and happy clients to come back. So one of the things as coaches we have to do is find the win first of all. Set them up to get a win because that's your problem if they're not getting a win. That means you didn't do something to help them get a win. Um, and then also reflect on that win and then also give them a nugget to keep them coming back. Hey, great job today. We're going to work on this next time. And you'd be like, all right, cool. Like, I feel like I can do that because I'm getting really good at this thing. So it's a, pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout model that really, helps build a good session however many athletes in your class you have over, right? And you don't need to go on every athlete every day. Some people are just there to get a workout in, and I totally understand that. And that was something I had trouble, adjusting to at the beginning, because when you have a lot of knowledge and you have all this, new energy to bring to your class, you want to tell everyone everything and you want to correct every little thing. But adjusting to finding the people in class who are going to be receptive that day, people who's in class, and I mean this in a nice way, pay are worth your time that day. Um, because even if there's people who may be receptive, but it's going to go in a year and one out the other year, day after day. And those are the fun ones because you really have to find a way to reach them. And there's ways to do it, but that's what keeps coaching interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to switch gears here because there is a question specific to you that I want to ask you and get your opinion on. Um, so something that I mean I've been vocal about this on the podcast before that I truly believe is that people that are successful in one domain have the capacity to be successful in many domains, right? And that's I look at you very much in that way. It's you put the same meticulous thought and care into the things that I've seen you do, and that's really cool to see. And like I guess what I'm trying to get at the question I have here is like how do you think that like your swimming career and you taking time off to build an app and then you pursuing a career as an audio engineer at Apple and succeeding at all these things, what kind of lateral application can you take from those things to your curiosity in coaching and your fitness itself? What principles do you think have carried you far in those other domains in life that now you can look at fitness in the same way and that's making you see success there as well?
Sure. Um, I think I could boil it down to two things, and it's one, maybe three. Okay. You have to try.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
lose 90% of the population on that. You have to care,
Okay.
and then you have to stay curious. Okay. Um, you can never be done. There is no done. Okay. Well, I'll be done in whatever, 89 years, 80 years, whatever many
Yeah.
years,
How
right?
long do you plan to live, homie?
I don't know, man. If these generations are living past 100, let's break 100 and keep going. I'd be the oldest CrossFit coach ever,
Good for
oldest
you,
programmer in
man.
Apple.
I
Yeah,
got like six more in me.
I know, man. Conversation way too often. How many years does Jordan have left? Uh, um, but yeah, that very initial story, curious from a young age. I had a goal in mind at a young age, and I was able to try, stay curious, and I cared. Everything I do that I take on is something I care about. And I don't take on things I don't care about. And that I don't mean that in a selfish way, but you don't have to give your all to everything. You
Hmm.
can give varied amounts. And what you see in the gym and what you see, when I'm doing my work on as a baseball administrator, and what you see when I do my work at work is those are my maximum effort, balls to the wall. Let's try our hardest. And why I pick those things? Well, one's my career and I care a lot about it. Two, fitness is keeps me from losing my shit at Apple. You have to have something to balance out your career. And then, baseball recently and, becoming an administrator and being involved in my children's activities is, I don't know, a way I really can connect with my children, and, being involved and helping them out and them seeing that I'm doing that activity and taking interest in their things. And then also when they come to the gym and they watch me coach, my kids come in every Sunday. My fiance comes to drop me off a coffee, and the kids sit and watch a little bit, and they see that. My daughter sees that. Um, you want to take those things you care about and then try at them. Because the worst thing you can do is care about something and never actually try, because that's how it breaks down, and you eventually won't care anymore. And then you find yourself in a precarious situation where you have something you once loved and you're like, why am I even here? Well, it's you stop being curious about it, you stop caring, you thought you were done and it's died. But back to the idea here. Let's talk about Prescript and why I joined Prescript. Um, So I became a CrossFit coach. I went up to the owner of the gym and I said, "Can I coach here?" She said, I said, "I know you're looking for coaches. Can I coach here?" She said, "Yeah. Have you taken level one yet?" I said, "No, I'll go take it." And I took it a weekend later. She's like, "You're done?" I said, "Yeah, I'm done. Can I coach now?" She, go through 3 months and everything. I started coaching. I did exactly what the book said. And I was still curious and I was asking a lot of questions. And I started taking your lifting class. And I think I was already taking your Olympic lifting class in the back. But um, what you brought to the table, Jordan, is you brought a whole different angle to fitness. And I realized that while you're doing a support and while you're focused on a certain domain, there is still completely parallel but relevant domains that can contribute to the path you're driving. So I saw the prescript training philosophy and the principles based approach still be completely applicable to CrossFit. And one of the things you hear in this, prescript and CrossFit relationship that you guys have, because like it or not, you got a lot of CrossFit coaches in your address book, is
They're the
there
ones I
is
do
a
like.
yeah. Um, is that there is still a huge interaction between you and CrossFit, and that a
Hmm.
principles based approach to CrossFit is completely applicable. And I was able to see that, and through level one, totally fucking blew my mind. Um, the amount of tutoring sessions we had in the back trying to figure out, what the fuck Shiloh was talking about, hanging on his every word. And then huge shout out to Mac, who answered some of the dumbest questions I've ever asked. But side note on that, if you don't ask dumbass questions, you're never going to learn that they're dumbass questions, and you're never going to learn to ask better questions.
Yeah.
You can ask anyone that's ever worked with me. I ask more questions than everyone else. I ask about everything, because the only way you're going to freaking know something is if you ask about it, right?
Hmm. I
I
love
work at
it.
Apple with 100,000 people. If I don't know something, I just ask, because someone at Apple knows how to do it. Or I could just waste my time. I could waste the whole day learning how to do it, or I could just go ask someone who does and get the answer. So continuing to ask questions through Prescript, through CrossFit, through the coaches in my gym. Um, Coming out of Prescript, I had more questions than answers. But what I learned to do was, continue to care, because you can't, what's up? You can't get upset about you not knowing something and get scared. You continue to care about it. You continue to stay curious, and you start to learn a language. And um, something we haven't brought up, I minored in Chinese in college, and I played an instrument growing up. And music and language and learning another language and learning something new are all very similar in how I see it. And right now, I'm still learning how to, and I've been practicing for 3 years in the Prescript language, in this biomechanics and orthokinematics language, how to speak it, right? And I practice with you. And Taya is an up and coming, hopefully level two,
Mhm.
when she takes it. I'm practicing with her at the gym, and I go out and practice with other people. I go to the labs and I practice giving answers. I practice speaking the language. And one of the things that happens is people learn things, or they get their first job, or they, take a year off of swimming and they never practice the language, right? The goal of the app was to practice the language. How do I learn how to build an app? How do you learn how to do something, right? And you know, in Prescript, we're still speaking English, but the words we're using are different. So the only way to get better is to practice and ask more questions and, you know, figure out why you were wrong.
Yeah.
And then underlying of all that is you have to care. And underlying of all that is you have to try. And that is how I think, you know, I became the Prescript coach I am today. And why, you know, I'm not done, not done. I remember, sorry, I've been going on, but I was looking to get a raise at
Oh,
my gym last year. And the my manager asked me, she's like, so, you know, I'm giving you this raise, great work. Congratulations, you done a, you know, hell of a lot of work this past year, increasing your knowledge, you know, your contributions to the gym. She's like, what's coming up next? She's like, you know, is there more for you? I said, we're not even done yet. We're just getting started.
hmm.
Because as you learn the language better, there's more words to learn. And in 3 years of learning Chinese at the college level, I asked one of my professors at the end of those 3 years, I was like, so like, where am I as a Chinese speaker? She's like, you're about like what a fifth grader could say. And I was like, all right, fifth grader, probably know a bunch of dirty words or something. But,
Yeah.
um, you know, that's why I make akin to like a fifth grader is what, 11 years old. So I could speak like an 11-year-old. And right now I can speak like a trainer who's been, you know, speaking Prescript language for 3 years, right? And I want to become more advanced. I want to become a Prescript trainer who sounds like they've been speaking for 5 years, been speaking for 10 years, form my own sentences, form my own original thoughts, right? Because a lot of it, you know, is just copying what you hear on the podcast, copying what you hear in class, you know, starting to bring in your own nuances. And eventually you get to shout out Killian's learning skill acquisition model. You come to actually creating your own thoughts. You come to your own original ideas where you are now going back and contributing to what originally taught you.
Unreal, man. Yeah, and that was so beautifully full circle the way that that came about. Um, yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that besides I appreciate you coming on and being here. And it's great to hear your perspective on this stuff because even though we talk about this stuff awesome, I learned a lot from you today and the way that you think about this and the way that your mindset has developed and that's huge. And I appreciate the effort and the care and the curiosity that you put into this and it definitely shows in the way you do what you do and hopefully that can touch some people and kind of give some people some direction. But I appreciate you being here, man. Is there, if people want to reach out to you, talk to you more about this, if you want them to leave you the fuck alone, you can just say that. But how can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Alin Kenworthy, Kenworthy. I'm actually taking a break right now for my sanity. Um, Super important to me to do that right now, but I'll be back. Um, and yeah, shout out level one. I don't know if you can do it right now. It's coming up, but I had to say this. I have to interrupt you one more time.
Yeah.
If you're a trainer who wants to get better at what the fuck you're doing, you gotta take Prescript level one. It includes the community thing, includes the labs, and the analytical person in me like broke it down dollar for dollar. Like the amount of dollar for dollar value you're getting from Prescript is absolutely unmatched. So whatever is holding you up, like dude, just do it. Go do
Man,
it. Go do Prescript. You gotta learn. You gotta get
I,
better.
I'm not even paying them to say that. No, I appreciate that, man. That's huge. And
Yeah,
I mean, I feel the same way, obviously, but I'm very biased. But I think there is a lot of value in it. And the thing is, like, the best thing about it to me is, selfishly, I get to get connected to people like you and like people with a similar mindset that want to learn. But it creates these conversations, it curates these conversations, and it brings people that are curious or have a different point of view to the table. And in the lab, in the collective, you get to learn from other people at a very high velocity because of the atmosphere that it creates, and that's what I appreciate about it. So
absolutely. Agreed.
yeah, So if you guys are interested right now, go on to the website, www.pre-grip.com. Click on the level 1. It's not for sale, but it goes for sale on the 24th of this month, March 24th. That's next Monday. If you get your email on the wait list, we will send you the only available discount to get the best price on the course that we possibly offer. And then that goes for sale next Monday, the 24th. But aside from that, Alin, I appreciate you taking the time.